Welcome to the first episode of End Time Showcase. I'm Troy Anderson, your co-host, along with retired U.S. Army Chaplain and Colonel David Giammona. We've joined forces on an upcoming book, The Military Guide to Armageddon, Battle-Tested Strategies to Prepare Your Life and Soul for the End Times. Welcome, Colonel Giammona, to End Time Showcase. How are you doing today?
Troy, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I look forward to next few minutes with you. I think it's going to be exciting.
Would you tell our audience a bit about yourself?
Sure. I spent 32 years in the Army as a chaplain. I went from second lieutenant to the rank, retired at the rank of colonel a couple of years ago. Been around the world. Been in about 3 to 4 combat zones, depending on what you call a combat zone. But I've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia right after Desert Storm, and some other places that weren't considered combat zones, but I think they should have been, like Central America, Honduras, places like that. Been married 40 years to a wonderful wife, Esther. Got 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and just a wonderful family experience, and got really interested in the end times many years ago, back in the Stone Ages in the 70s, and been studying end times all my life, but now I've devoted full time to it, and there's a lot of exciting things happening that we're going to share about today even. So thanks a lot.
We first met a couple of years ago when you contacted me out of the blue. Would you tell our audience about that, the backstory behind the Military Guide to Armageddon?
Yeah, the book that we're writing that's going to be published by Chosen Books January 4th. It's actually coming out. I know we're both excited about it, and so is the publisher. The Military Guide to Armageddon didn't start out that way. I actually started a few years ago writing while I was still on active duty, and I was doing another ministry called the Warrior Refuge, which I've since kind of combined with what I'm doing now. As I started to write the book and I got on the computer, after a chapter or two, the Lord spoke to me really powerfully and said, "Hey, David, this is not the direction I want you to go. I really want you to write about the end times." And it was just like a light switched on, and I switched gears, and I did all the chapters in the manuscript, and then I said, "Lord, now what?" And I was in my office one day at Installation Management Command Headquarters in San Antonio. And that command manages all the installations of the Army around the world, and I was in charge of all religious support. But one day I just was praying in my office, and then I said, "Lord, what do I do now with this manuscript? Where do you want it to go?" And I have a LinkedIn list of about 7,000 people that are on it, and I just kind of opened it up, and your name popped out on the screen. And I didn't know you from Adam, didn't know that you've written books. It just said you were an author, and I thought, I'll check this out. I'll see what Troy Anderson is all about and what he does. And I wanted some advice, and lo and behold, you're an end times author, and you have written national bestsellers, and you've done this many times before and over the years. And I just thought, God, you're a good God, and we connected. You prayed about it, I prayed about it, and as they say, the rest is history. So I was pretty excited about that.
Today, the world is facing many crises, including the coronavirus pandemic and resulting economic downturn. What are your thoughts about this crisis and how it may fit into the Bible's prophetic timeline?
Well, a lot of people point, and I will too, to Matthew chapter 24, where Jesus on the Olivet Discourse is sitting on the Mount of Olives. And by the way, I was just there on the Mount of Olives a few weeks ago, and then they shut Israel down and we had to fly home. That's a whole nother story. But on that discourse, we wrote about it in our book, and Jesus pointed out that, about the end times. So one of the things he did say is there's going to be wars, rumors of wars, but that's not the end. And there's going to be pestilences, plagues, things like that. And if you look throughout the Old and New Testament, you see that during the end times, things are going to get pretty difficult. I think this pestilence, this plague, this COVID-19 is a warning shot from the Lord, and said, look, folks, this is serious. This will get over eventually, hopefully, soon, but there will be other things coming. So this is all part of the end times scheme. Since 1948, May 14th, when Israel became a nation, I really believe it upped the ante of the end times. And now we're looking at not just COVID-19, fires in Australia, asteroids out there that we're concerned about, many different kinds of things. And just this morning, we heard about the possible death of the leader of North Korea. So lots of interesting things going on all at the same time. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to be prayerful, and we have to be ready.
You know, the death of the North Korean leader brings to mind something that you put in the Military Guide to Armageddon. Would you give our audience a preview of what you experienced directly with the North Korean leader here a couple years ago?
Yes, that's actually, I believe, in our first chapter or introduction. Maybe it was the introduction. But I was driving along in my truck with my wife one Saturday morning in San Antonio. It was a cold, foggy type of January morning there, and we're going to Walmart. You know, nothing out of the ordinary. I was still on active duty. I still had my, active duty cell phone where they can, call me at any time if there's an emergency. And over my truck speakerphone, my daughter called, and she was in a terrified panic. I mean, crying hysterically over the phone. And she's an adult. And she was working at the Halikoa at the time in Honolulu, which is an Army resort, really nice there on the beach near Waikiki. And she's crying hysterically. I go, honey, what's wrong? What's going on? She goes, Dad, we just got an alert that North Korea has launched nuclear ballistic missiles at Hawaii. Well, Troy, you can imagine all the bells and whistles went off in my mind, and I'm thinking, if that is true, I should have been getting some calls from the Army. We have been, notified or something. Nothing was going on, and I immediately went into Army mode and started giving my daughter direction where she should go, how she should do it, and if you read the book, it's greatly detailed in there. But the end of the story is this. We got her to safety deep into the underground, the Halikoa, and felt like, she would be safe anywhere there, and found out just some little bit of time later that was a false alarm. However, the learning point is this: your world could be changed and rocked in a matter of hours. And so I learned from that, we have to be always vigilant and always prepared for what is happening. It could have been the end of the world right then and there. It could have been the coming of the Lord. It could have been the fulfillment of anything, but it wasn't. But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
And the entire world has come to this realization that perhaps we are in the end times now. There's a recent poll that came out, found 9 in 10 pastors see signs of the end times, signs that Jesus is coming, returning. That's a Lifeway research poll. You were in Israel as this coronavirus was rippling throughout the world in this lockdown. Can you tell our audience about your experience in Israel? Just a little over.
Yes, so we had no idea when we left. We were going for a whole month to do some study for a new book that we're writing, and to add to the book that we currently are writing. So we were there for about a month, but shortened it by a week. The sign that really kind of got me was we're coming back from Petra in Jordan, and the border was basically locked down. We got off the bus, and there was a guy there in full surgical garb, face mask and everything, with thermometer, one of the ones that don't touch you just pointed, and it gives you your temperature. He took temperature of everybody on the bus. Then we went through all this interrogation, where we were, where we're going. Then we got into the Israeli side. The same thing was going on. We finally got on the bus, made it through, and then we're coming into Jerusalem, and the Army has a checkpoint and they're waiting for all the tour buses to go through, because I was sitting right behind the bus driver. He says, hey, if you guys know how to pray, and it was a Jewish bus driver, he says, better pray now. I've been stopped 8 times a day. They make people get off the bus, and some people don't get to go into Jerusalem. So we were immediately concerned. I prayed, my wife prayed, the whole bus prayed. And as we were going through the Army checkpoint, the soldiers came out and just waved us through and said, keep going. And a jubilation erupted on the bus. And it was an interesting experience. What can change in just a few hours and a few days is incredible. Israel went through a whole lockdown, and we had a hard time getting out of there, but the Lord opened the door, and we finally made a plane to London, and then London to Atlanta, and we made it home.
Yeah, it's quite an experience, quite a story.
Absolutely.
Why do you believe we are in the end times, and what qualifies you to make that assumption?
Well, I'll start with the qualifications. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever fully qualified to make that assumption, but I've been studying end times and the prophetic word eschatology, which is the study of end times, last things, where we're going, heaven, earth, all these things. But a part of eschatology is the coming of the Lord. And I've been studying this for over 40 years, 45 years. I've done formal studies in it. I've read almost probably every scripture, and 1/3 of the Bible is fully prophetic, talking about what is going to happen. I'm leading a Bible study right now here in the local area of Georgia that is on the book of Revelation. Did a lot of study just recently in Israel about the end times. We went to Megiddo, which is the valley of Armageddon, the last battle. So I've had a lot of experiences, and associating with people like yourself and others, Joel Richardson, and others around the world. I think, I humbly would say probably as qualified, but will get more qualified. As I've never stopped studying. I'm taking courses and classes continually. I just got a book today, The Temples That Jerusalem Forgot, about the building of the third temple. So I've had a lot of experience, a lot of time, and I'm devoting it all. What makes me think we're in the last of the last days? I think the last days started in the resurrection of Jesus and in the Acts of the Apostles. But I think we're at the end of the end times, 2,000 years later, because of one very significant thing, I think more than all. Israel became a nation in one day, as prophesied in the Old Testament, on May 14th, 1948. That really is a key indicator of all the end time things are going. I believe the Bible is a very Middle East centric book. All the nations around Israel are enemies of Israel right now. Israel has to be on constant alert. And then we had Donald Trump, moving the embassy of the United States here just recently and into Jerusalem, which I stayed 100 yards away from it in a hotel, near a hotel there. So that was kind of exciting. All those events in Jerusalem, in Israel, what's happening in the world, all the things that we're watching and seeing, world wars, the viruses, the plagues, the fires, the coming things that we're seeing in the heavens, just all point. I'm not going to give a date, but we can look at the signs, we can look at the times, and things are ramping up pretty quickly.
Why did you want us to write a book now about preparing for the end?
Well, Troy, you and I have talked about this numerous times, and I just think the church is not ready. In the United States of America, the church is, it needs training, it needs preparation. As you know, an Army officer, I went through a lot of training, become a chaplain, and even after I got into the chaplaincy, it took 10 years to become a chaplain with all the educational requirements, all the training, all the preparation. And then once you get in the Army, guess what? You get to do that all over again in, training and the basics, from low crawling under barbed wire with machine gun bullets flying overhead, which we talk about in the book, to going to war, to all the things that you experience, the travel, the education, 3 master's degrees later. It just was time to help the church prepare for what is happening right now and what is going to happen, especially with the rise of the Antichrist. I think in time to come, I think we're going to see a lot more of end times events folding. And if you stay tuned to the show as we do this weekly podcast, we'll talk about all those in specifics.
What combat or war experiences did you have that influenced your current worldview?
Well, first combat experience was 6 months after I got into the Army. I got in January of 1990 on active duty. I actually got in the Army in 1985 as a second lieutenant in seminary as a chaplain candidate. But when I went to my first duty station, I'll never forget this day. I was in the gym working out in the morning, and over the loudspeaker, it's like something right out of a movie. The loudspeaker says, if you're a soldier right now here in the gym, get out, get back to your unit. We're calling, for alert. We're ramping up to go to war. And when you hear those kinds of things, it gets your attention. It says, this is not a drill. Get back to your unit now because we're ramping up to go to war. And so we went to war right after Desert Storm. We were still in action in Saudi Arabia. We were defending. I was in a Patriot battalion, which is a missile system that can shoot planes and missiles out of the air, point to point. And we were stationed in the oil fields of Saudi Arabia. So that year I put 30,000 miles on my vehicle, visiting all the troops we were spread out all over Saudi Arabia, defending against, at that time, Saddam Hussein and missile system, his Scud missiles. He had fired a number of them at us. We were defending Saudi Arabia in the oil fields. And then after that, I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan. Like I said, I've been to Honduras, which we're having a low conflict intensive war there. I've seen a lot of things, and I've seen soldiers really question their faith because they've seen their buddies killed. They've been severely wounded. They want to know where God is. And through those experiences, we wrote down in the military guide to Armageddon, you have to be prepared, whether you're going to combat or you're going into the tribulation, the end times, the COVID-19. And I just believe we're not prepared. And we need to get on a war footing. It's time to stop playing church and start really getting prepared and getting ready for the coming of the Lord. Because it's happening, and things are not going to stop with COVID-19, I can assure you. Other things, we could get a lull for a while, but other things will be coming, and we'll have to be ready. So more to follow on that.
How would you speak and inform our audience about preparing for what comes next?
Well, I think the most important thing is, number one, we need to get serious. I think a lot of Christians, they love the idea of going to church, going to fellowship afterwards, having their coffee and donuts, going out to lunch, having a nice leisurely Sunday afternoon. And I understand all of that. But I think those times are really coming to a head. And just several months ago, I told my Bible study group here in Georgia, I'm on a 46-acre compound or place that we have built up here, that we're doing ministry out of this place. So I told my group, I said, look, there's a time coming where the church is not going to be able to meet in large groups. And we're going to have to meet in small groups because of the persecution. Little did I know at the time, Troy, that just a few months later, we're meeting in small groups, and because of COVID-19. I had no idea that, the Lord had told me the previous year that by the time the book came out, lots of things were going to be happening on the earth. I had no idea about this virus, and we can talk more about the virus later on. We have ideas about where that's come from. But the fact of the matter is, every one of the small groups said, how did you know that we were supposed to be meeting small groups? I said, It was the Lord, it's the Holy Spirit. And so the preparation is getting serious, meeting in small groups, getting into a mode of prayer and Bible study and reading, understanding what these end times are all about and what we're going to go through. Whether you're a pre-trib, mid-trib, A-trib, pre-wrath, we'll talk about all those things later. But the important thing is we better be ready or we're not going to make it.
Thank you, Colonel. It's been a great honor to interview you. We'd also like to thank everyone for watching our first episode of End Time Showcase, as featured on Prophecy Investigators, the Colonel's website, and the Prophecy Investigators YouTube channel. Be sure to sign up for the free newsletter to Prophecy Investigators at prophecyinvestigators.org. You'll receive news, commentary, in-depth investigative articles, and videos from over 24 Bible prophecy experts, faith leaders, best-selling authors, and award-winning journalists. Soon, you'll be able to pre-order Colonel Giammona and I's upcoming book, The Military Guide to Armageddon. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on our Prophecy Investigators YouTube channel to ensure you're notified of our next show. Thank you and God bless.